The CIA is warning that ISIS may be larger than experts thought. The terror group may have as many as 31,000 fighters in Iraq and Syria.
That report comes as Congress debates the president's plan for attacking the terrorist army. Ephraim Graham has the story.
I will not hesitate to take action against ISIL in Syria as well as Iraq.
President Obama's strategy to degrade and defeat the ISIS terror threat calls for arming and training rebels in Syria, increasing airstrikes in Iraq, and expanding those airstrikes to Syria. It's a plan some presidential supporters call aggressive, but others question if the president's actions are enough. That includes Republican House Speaker John Boehner.
An F-16 is not a strategy, and airstrikes alone will not accomplish what we're trying to accomplish. Somebody's boots have to be on the ground.
Boehner's reaction comes as new CIA intelligence reveals the size and scope of ISIS is more massive than previous reports of just 10,000. It's now estimated the terror organization can muster as many as 20,000 to more than 31,000 fighters across Iraq and Syria. With an enemy that large, the head of the House Intelligence Committee says it could take more than a decade to defeat ISIS. Republican Congressman Peter King told reporters this is not just bombing a mountainside or securing a dam. He says this is a war that could last 10 to 15 years.
We're very busy, as you know, and I'm very grateful you could come.
Meanwhile, Secretary of State John Kerry is on a whirlwind tour of the Middle East, lining up support for a coalition to take on ISIS. But Kerry says the U.S. is not at war with the group. He calls the fight a significant counterterrorism operation.
This is a moment for all decent countries to come together and stand up and say to the world that we've had enough of these individual groups.
Ephraim Graham, CBN News.
Well, I agree with our House Republican leadership that you don't win wars, and this is a war, with just air power. And that's been a lesson from military history for the past 60, 70 years. When you look at what happened in Germany, it wasn't until the troops actually invaded Germany that the German war machine was shut down. And there you had saturation bombing day and night, and it's still, Hitler was still able to marshal an army and control vast areas of Europe. Until we get boots on the ground, we're not going to see any kind of diminution in the power that ISIS has, and specifically their power to get new volunteers to come and fight for them. So we need boots on the ground. Well, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says ISIS is only one example of the threat from radical Islam. John Jessup has that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
Gordon, Netanyahu says groups like ISIS and Hamas and Hezbollah in the Middle East near Israel and Boko Haram in Nigeria are all, quote, branches of the same poisonous tree. The Israeli leader made those remarks at his annual address at the International Counterterrorism Conference on the anniversary of 9/11. He also said these types of Islamic terrorists are a threat to the whole world.
All present a clear and present danger to the peace and security of the world and to our common civilization. I believe that the battle against these groups is indivisible, and it's important not to let any of these groups succeed anywhere. Because if they gain ground somewhere, they gain ground everywhere. And their setbacks are also felt everywhere.
Netanyahu urged that all civilized countries stand together to fight radical terrorism. President Obama says it's important to protect Christians and other religious minorities in the Middle East. Obama and National Security Advisor Susan Rice met with Christian leaders from the region Thursday. They spoke about the pressures Christians face from the rise of militant Islam. The president said the U.S. will work with the Lebanese army and other regional partners to fight ISIS terrorists. The ongoing Syrian war and the rise of the ISIS army in Iraq and Syria have forced hundreds of thousands of Christians to flee their ancient homelands. The Ebola virus in Africa could spread to 15 more countries, putting as many as 70 million people at risk, according to a study from Oxford University in England. The London Telegraph reports researchers studied how Ebola could spread by wild animals like bats or chimpanzees and eventually to humans. The current Ebola outbreak is already the largest in history. And here at home, the third American infected with Ebola is recovering at a hospital in Nebraska. Dr. Rick Sacra received 2 blood transfusions recently from Dr. Kent Brantley, one of the 2 recent American survivors of Ebola.
I didn't get to see Kent. He was here before I got here. And it really meant a lot to us that he was willing to give that donation so soon after his own recovery. And I spoke with his wife before it was arranged, and we both marveled at the fact that they had the same blood type. That was just, to us, that was something from the Lord.
The first donor we tested was a mismatch, and we were down to our last shot, so we said, uh-oh, but worked out great.
Doctors say Brantley's blood has antibodies that Sacra had not been able to develop, and the transfusion may help kickstart Sacra's immune system. Sacra also received an experimental drug that doctors say they are not allowed to identify. His family hopes that what is being learned about the virus here in the States can help stop the spread in West Africa, where it has killed nearly 2,300 people. The United States and the European Union are moving ahead with sanctions against Russia because of the crisis in Ukraine. The sanctions could be rolled back if Moscow follows through on its promise to help end the conflict. Months of fighting have taken a heavy toll on parts of Ukraine. As George Thomas reports, CBN's Orphans Promise has been helping meet both the physical and spiritual needs of Ukrainians caught in the middle of the crisis.
Galina Kucher will be the first to admit she's in unfamiliar territory. In 23 years of working for CBN, have you experienced anything like this?
No, I've dealt with social disasters all my career, but this is by far the biggest challenge I've ever had to face.
Since the crisis in Crimea erupted and pro-Russian separatists invaded parts of eastern Ukraine, she and her team have worked around the clock distributing humanitarian aid.
Today people need food, tomorrow they need medical assistance, or you have to evacuate them from the war zone. We weren't ready for this kind of disaster, but life has put us in such circumstances that we've had to risk our lives to save children, feed them, attend to their medical and psychological needs.
For several months now, Orphans Promise has been running a hotline connecting a stream of refugees coming out of the war zone here in the east and the Crimean Peninsula, with families and churches willing to help.
This war has shown the true face of the Protestant Church in Ukraine. They are united and helping. The government couldn't handle the flow of refugees, but thanks to the Christians, we were able to respond.
She's made several trips here to the war zone, and each time struggles with the magnitude of suffering and heartbreak.
In 23 years, I've coordinated hundreds of humanitarian distributions, but I have never had to hand out bread to people. It's just insane that in Ukraine, the country that grows wheat and is the breadbasket of Europe, people would be in need of bread.
And this is a war that's happening on the doorsteps of Europe.
Ukraine is a peaceful nation, and since our independence has never fought anyone, we gave away our nuclear weapons. We have no real army. I never thought our nation was at risk, especially from Russia.
About 1,000 Russian troops still reportedly operate in Ukraine, with an additional 20,000 on the Russian side of the border. Thousands of pro-Russian separatists firmly control large chunks of eastern Ukraine. Kucher says the situation in the rebel-controlled areas is dangerous and dire.
Some people that we have evacuated from the war zone were in such shock that they were close to a nervous breakdown. They were shaking non-stop and couldn't believe we got them out.
In between handing out bread and other critical relief supplies to hundreds of families, Kucher says her team is always ready to meet more than just physical needs.
We have many opportunities to share the gospel with people, pray with them, and I have even noticed how thirsty people are for the Word of God. They grab Bibles from our hands. People are open.
Nearly a week after a tenuous ceasefire was signed, explosions rocked the conflict-ridden Donetsk region overnight. Kucher says it's just another sad reminder of the challenges facing her war-weary countrymen. George Thomas, CBN News, Eastern Ukraine.
Meeting the critical needs of those in Ukraine. Gordon?
If you want to be a part of helping, you can make a designated gift to Orphans Promise, and 100% of your gift will go into the work of helping orphans, not just in the Ukraine, but around the world. And during this disaster, and anytime you're in a war zone, you're in a disaster zone. During this disaster, these people really need our help. So if you want to be a part of it, call us now, 1-800-759-0700, or you can write to us at Orphans Promise, CBN Center, Virginia Beach, Virginia, or you can just log on to cbn.com. There's a place on the giving page where you can designate your gift to Orphans Promise. Do it now. Call us now, 1-800-759-0700.
Former NFL quarterback Tim Tebow is joining Good Morning America. The Heisman Trophy winner at the University of Florida played in the NFL, leading the Denver Broncos to the playoffs in 2012. He was also briefly with the New York Jets and the New England Patriots. Since then, he's been working as a guest host and analyst with ESPN. Tebow, who's been very public about his Christian faith, will be part of a segment called Motivate Me Monday. It highlights individuals and their stories of triumph. He'll appear in studio as well as live on locations in towns across the country. The series premieres on Monday. Operation Blessing is helping children in war-torn South Sudan to attend school. Families coming to the capital city of Juba from villages all over the country are willing to do whatever it takes to see their children go to school, even living in a cemetery, the only land available to settle near a school. But they still don't have enough money to buy food or afford the school fees. Operation Blessing has teamed up with Confident Children Out of Conflict, a local organization, to distribute food to these families and to provide scholarships for the children to attend school. You can learn more about Operation Blessing by going to its website, ob.org.